Welcome back to the Bear and Bitcoin podcast, where I talk about the future of money. I'm your host, Jane Dabauskas. Well, of course, it's been a while since I uploaded my last podcast episode. I think it was August around when I posted my last episode. Bitcoin's been making some big moves in the meantime. I myself has been busy with schoolwork and college. As you can see, I'm in my college dorm. Got the new setup. Got my new microphone here. Sound really, really well. Sound crispy. I have decoration in my room. I have the Stonks flag. That was a must-have, absolute must-have. Everyone loves it. Yeah. I recently released an article of self-reflection for my 20th birthday on Medium. If you haven't read it or want to read it, link to it will be in the YouTube description below. If you're watching this on any other platform I posted this on, or listening to this on any other platform I posted this on, a link to that will be pinned on my Twitter profile header. So you go to my Twitter profile at Jane Dabauskas, and you'll see it on the top. Small side note, I don't like basically forcing an analysis. I like to wait until the time is right, until price action says otherwise for a potential reversal or a potential key area of interest, pretty much. But this analysis, I will admit, is somewhat forced. Basically, I leave to go back home tomorrow morning, and I won't be back here with my setup, my nice microphone, my nice camera, my nice lights. I won't be here until after winter break. They're not gonna let us come back to the college after Thanksgiving break, so I'm gonna stay home for about 2 months. So I just wanted to crank this video out. And I'll be going over a lot of different scenarios since a lot of this will be mostly uncertain. So yeah, getting into the meat and potatoes of the episode, Bitcoin has broken above the 2019 resistance of 14K. Let me pull up a chart for you. Oh, that's the wrong one. Aha. Bitcoin's always known for surprising to the upside, and it sure got me. It broke above resistance all the way up to a peak literally today of 18,977. Bitcoin rising so close to its previous all-time high of 19,700 back in 2017. So it's almost there, going parabolic. It doing this has raised the probability, in my opinion, that a new multi-year bull cycle is just starting. But I'd like to possibly see a healthy, decently sized retrace before breaking above 19.7 and going into basically price discovery mode, because there isn't much resistance after that. It's just going to be go up and up. Looking at a daily chart, as I have pulled up, Bitcoin is approaching the last line of resistance from 19.2 to 19.7 right here. And which the reason how I made that resistance, some people ask me how I made these little resistance zones, is either on a daily or a weekly chart. I take of an important reversal point, like the top right here, or like a B wave or a top right here, local top. I take the wick and the closing of around 2 to 3 bars, and try to connect as many points as I can to make it look very nice and extend out the box really, really far to the current prices. So I do it right here. I do it for support and resistances. So yeah, looking at the daily RSI. RSI hasn't dipped below its overbought zone of 70. Kind of did right there, like 0.5. That doesn't really count. It's been oscillating above from 70 to around 85 for around since about a month straight, 4 weeks. And yeah, it's been oscillating there. It's seeing that resistance, not resistance, it's seeing that relative strength above 70 as kind of like support at this point, because it's just ripping higher and higher. On a weekly, you can see Bitcoin's weekly RSI is at 84, which is pretty high, pretty overbought, but it only almost reminds me of one of these places right here where it ripped higher and then is going to retrace back, but for those 4 weeks it went absolute parabolic. That's what it kind of reminds me of, as like a start of a new bull cycle. And pull back on the 1 day. So yeah, historically in the last time in 2016, let me go back. Actually, I'm going to pull back up the weekly again. Okay, back in 2016, or late 2016 to early 2017, right here, That's when Bitcoin was approaching its all-time high again. Its all-time high was made back in November 2013 of 1163. And January 2nd, it reached a high of 1139. So that's around 2% lower than its previous all-time high. And then after hitting that little 2% lower, it retraced about 34% down to 750. I know it's only 2 bars and that doesn't look that big, even in log scale of a 34% drop, but that's just how crazy this bull cycle was in 2017. But that's kind of what kind of looks probable for what we're at right now. We're approaching all-time highs. We're a little bit below it, not quite 2%, but we're a little bit below it, and we could hit that resistance zone at 19.2 and start to pull back around 30, 25 to 30, maybe 35%. And that bring us back actually down to, the math works out, down to around 12 to 13K. And that is actually the same area as, let me pull back to that of the day. That's the same area that we tried to break above 12.5 right here, I think. Yeah, 12.473. We tried to break above that. We rejected hard. And then that was that same point where once it broke above, on October 21st, 2020, once it broke above that zone, it ripped higher and just went parabolic. So that was like an important zone right there, around 12, 11, or 11.9, or pretty much 12,000 to 12,500. And since around 13,000 is the daily resistance from the 2019 peak, that's also pretty important as well. Once we ripped through that, that was also a big candle as well. So those two areas are important places of support I want to see retested if we were to pull back in such a manner. Another scenario could be where Bitcoin just goes straight up and ignores this resistance and just rips higher above that 19.7, leaving most people in disbelief before exhibiting a blow-off top like correction that can be just as sharp. I like to see Bitcoin retrace and retest that breakout zone of 12,500 because apparently Bitcoin likes to retest those breakout zones. As you can see, one example is that same exact area where we're trying to break above 10,500 to 10,000, this little green line right here. And once we broke above it, we absolutely ripped through it up to around 12.5. And once we couldn't break above that, we retested that same area where we broke out. Another example of that behavior in Bitcoin is on a longer term scale is from the 2018 bottom to that COVID crash. So that one day in April 2nd, I think, April 2nd, 2019, we ripped up to 18% higher in one day. It broke out above that little local resistance, ripped higher, went absolute parabolic, and then downtrend, broke the downtrend, and then retested that breakout zone before ripping absolutely higher to where we are today. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for let me draw a box. I'm looking for something to retest this little area right here, around 13.8 to 12,000. I'd load up on a lot of spot Bitcoin if Bitcoin goes back down to those prices right there. Anyways, from a Elliott wave perspective, Bitcoin's correction and consolidation during September, this little correction and little consolidation right here, I guess it could be seen as just micro nested wave 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2s before absolutely overextending a fifth wave and a third wave, just ripping right through as a parabolic structure right here. Bitcoin has been annoying to me with trying to count its waves in any time frame lower than a day because of its tendencies to basically overextend, and it has questionable impulse moves that look like 5 waves but then turn out to be 3 waves and then could be both. It's harder to do than stocks, I'll tell you that. But anyways, I'm just gonna keep going through this analysis turbo speed because I have to start packing. I want to pull up this fear and greed index. I pulled this up last episode. I think fear and greed index last episode was at around 70-ish. And I was saying that was technically an extreme greed. So to be careful if we don't break above those highs, which we ended up doing, and it just went parabolic after that. But fear and greed index for Bitcoin peaked around 2 days ago at around 94, I think. Yeah, 94, November 19th. So that's 2 days ago. It went at 94, and now we're still above that 91, 90-ish. And as you mostly already know, when everyone is greedy in a market, a top is usually near, and when everyone's fearful, a bottom is usually near. If you zoom out for all the fear and greed index data, you can see the last time we were at 90-ish, in the 90s, 95, I think. Yeah, no, 95 was at June 26, 2019. If I pull up a daily chart, June 26, 2019 is that top, at 13K top in 2019. So obviously we're at the same fear and greed levels, 94-ish. And yeah, so one interesting thing I want to point out about this fear and greed index is this chart that this guy I follow called Quant Fiction posted on Twitter. Is this chart shows that historically any fear and greed index value above 90 has a rolling Sharpe ratio of around negative 2.2, which simply means that either the risk-free rate part of the calculation of Sharpe ratio is greater than the expected return, or that the expected return is negative. So it's two different scenarios. So a negative Sharpe ratio isn't as easy to interpret as a positive one because there's two different ways you can see it, but it's still just overall just not a good thing to see. With this negative 2.2 Sharpe ratio in a historical context, you can assume that when fear and greed index gets this high, opening new long positions are too risky to justify the potential reward and will likely result in a subpar trade. Keep in mind that this calculation of negative 2.2 Sharpe ratio only has a sample size of 2 occurrences from when he posted this around November 11th. So it's only been above 90 since November 11th. November 11th, I think, hold on, 1 month. He posted this when we're at 86, and that means not including 90, means anything above 90. So before November 11th, we didn't break above 90, but it has done it in the past 2 times. So that low sample size means the data for calculating that average statistic is not as reliable as, let's say, anywhere from the 10 to 70 or 80 range, where all of this data is pretty much should be spot on because it has a lot more data to calculate. So yeah, that's what's also interesting about Quant Fiction's chart is that a fear and greed index value of around 50 to 90 actually has a really good Sharpe ratio, which implies that fear and greed index values that are neutral to slightly greedy historically give great risk-adjusted returns, while any index value below 10 give absolutely insane returns with a Sharpe ratio of 8. Put that in perspective, a Sharpe ratio of 1 is good. That's when you're like, okay, I should probably do this algorithm or do this trade, or this is worth it. Anything above 1 is good. 8 is absolutely insane. Another thing I want to point out that is not related to that is related to Bitcoin. One potential fundamental catalyst that I would like to point out for all markets, not just Bitcoin, is that obviously, recently we heard Joe Biden won the U.S. election. His tax plan includes an increase to 40% on long-term capital gains tax if your income is above $1 million per year. Obviously, there's a bunch of what-ifs with this scenario, depending on, 1, exactly when this tax plan will be passed, or 2, if it will be changed before it is passed, and that will change before it goes into effect. There can very well be a general sell-off in all markets for wealthy traders or investors trying to realize their gains before having to pay more taxes on it. So, yeah, that's one thing I want to point out. I thought that would be interesting as well. Quick summary: if you haven't been holding spot Bitcoin here, I can't see. If you've been holding spot Bitcoin here, good job. Watch for breaks in this parabolic structure, and watch breaks of this parabolic structure before taking risk off the table. If you're thinking of opening new longs or trying to buy spot for a short-term swing trade, watch out for the 19,200 to 19,700 resistance zone. And if not, going more long-term, right here is not a good place to buy short-term swing trades. Shorting here also I wouldn't say is advised, since Bitcoin can still rip higher and higher and really show everybody what a straight line really looks like. So yeah, I'll be watching the structure and be ready to load up on some more of spot Bitcoin around 12 to 13K range. And yeah, that was a little turbo analysis. That's all for this video. I gotta go pack up for going back home. If you liked the analysis, like the video, and be sure to follow me on Twitter for more frequent charts at James Bauskis. And peace out.